We already got the money set aside for appeals bond. Why? All white jury, the judge and the DA are buddies, along with the dad, best friends. That's been our trump card. We've been holding, already knew that. God has spoken, and you cannot make me believe that as many gray-haired white women on that jury that's dealing with white guilt about going to heaven is not going to have no compassion about a kid that's been straight A from the time he's ever read a book in school, has no history of violence, has saved children's lives by risking his own life by jumping in to save somebody from drowning. This kid has no violence. Austin, on the other hand, is a violent brute.
Okay, I need you to stop scrolling right now, because yesterday, something happened in a courtroom in Texas that has completely broken the internet in half, and Charleston White just went viral reacting to it, saying things that not everybody wants to hear, but everybody's talking about. I've been watching this case from the very beginning. I've seen the GoFundMe wars, the protests outside the courthouse, the debates, the threats, all of it. And yesterday, June 9th, 2026, it all came to a head. Karmelo Anthony, 19 years old, was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 35 years in prison. 35 years. The internet exploded, and Charleston White, being Charleston White, had something to say about it, and specifically about what he thinks comes next. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what happened, what Charleston said, what the appeal argument actually looks like, and why this conversation is far from over. Okay, if you enjoyed this, make sure to follow, like, share with your friends and family, and drop your thoughts in the comments. All right. Let me make sure everybody's on the same page, because some of you might be new to this story. On April 2nd, 2025, at a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas, two teenagers, both 17 years old, both from Frisco, had a confrontation under a team tent at Kendall Stadium. The teens attended different schools and did not know each other. A dispute started over seating space under that tent. Words were exchanged, things escalated, and Karmelo Anthony pulled out a knife and stabbed Austin Metcalf in the chest. Metcalf later died at the hospital. CNN. Anthony's defense, self-defense. He said Austin and his brother physically confronted him first and he had no choice. The prosecution's argument was simple. You don't get to meet a shove with a stab, especially if you provoke the shove. CNN. The trial began with jury selection on June 1st in Collin County and culminated with a guilty verdict on June 9th. The 12-person jury deliberated for approximately 2 hours and 20 minutes before reaching a verdict. The sentence came back at 35 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole after half that time is served. CBS News, +2. And the courtroom scene was intense. Austin Metcalf's mother addressed Anthony directly, saying, "We will never know what our future could have been." Her father said grief is not sadness. He called it pure, unfiltered rage and slammed his fist on the table. Metcalf's aunt told Anthony, "You may have been given a sentence of 35 years. You should feel lucky. I've been sentenced to a lifetime without my son." I don't care what side of the debate you're on, that is a gut punch moment that nobody can watch without feeling something. ABC News, +2. Now here's where this case gets complicated, and this is exactly where Charleston White comes in, because this is not just a murder case to a lot of people. It never was. The closely watched trial raised thorny questions about racism, Anthony is black, Metcalf was white, as well as bullying, weapons on school grounds, and claims of self-defense, CNN. The jury composition became a huge flashpoint. The trial began with no black jurors on the panel. That's not an accident of random selection. In Collin County, black residents make up roughly 10.8% of the population. According to basic probability theory, a purely random sample of 12 people from Collin County yields a roughly 99.4% chance that at least one person of color would be selected. And yet, 0 black jurors. Not one. Fox News, Emerald Book Inc. What happened? The defense raised concerns during the second round of strikes after prosecutions dismissed 3 potential jurors, all of whom were black, despite them being similarly situated to a white woman who remained in the pool. The defense filed a formal Batson challenge. That's a legal objection specifically about racial discrimination in jury selection. The presiding judge denied that challenge. Revolt.tv, Fox 7 Austin. Prosecutors responded that their strikes were based on non-racial reasons, including jurors' employment in education and answers suggesting possible bias. One black juror had reportedly said during vetting they would have a hard time putting a brother in jail. Okay, that's a fair reason to strike that specific person. But all of them? Every single eligible black juror? Lawyer Herald. Minister Dominique Alexander of the Next Generation Action Network was one of the loudest voices outside the courthouse after the verdict, pledging $10,000 towards an appeal, saying not one black soul on a jury at all. A white jury convicted him in 2 to 3 hours, CBS News. This is the backdrop for everything Charleston White is saying. This is not abstract debate. This is the actual factual record of what happened in that courtroom. Now, let's talk about Charleston White specifically, because his history with this case is actually more layered than people remember. When this story first broke in 2025, Charleston was not on Karmelo's side. He was publicly critical. Then in July 2025, he did a full reversal. Charleston White publicly apologized to Karmelo Anthony and his family, saying, "I want to take the time to apologize to Karmelo Anthony's family. I was wrong about that kid." Why? He said he had met with his father's story. He had been under the impression that Karmelo brought the knife to school with him, but found that wasn't the case. Black enterprise, black enterprise. That reversal matters because it means Charleston White went through a process. He gathered information, he changed his position based on new facts, and then he committed to defending this kid. So when he now goes viral reacting to the verdict and talking about an appeal, you can't just dismiss it as pure internet clout chasing. He's been locked into this case for over a year. After the verdict, Charleston came out talking about what he believes the appeal should argue, pointing specifically at the jury composition, the Batson challenge being denied, and what he sees as factors behind the scenes. He's not making that up, and honestly, he might not be right about the legal mechanics, even if you think the verdict itself was correct. Let's be real and break down whether an appeal has actual legal legs, because Charleston White saying they're preparing an appeal is not controversial. That is standard operating procedure in a case this high profile. There are at least 2 potential grounds that any competent appellate attorney will look at. Ground 1. The Batson challenge. The defense filed a formal Batson challenge alleging potential jurors were removed due to race, and the judge denied it. On appeal, an appellate court can revisit whether that denial was correct. If an appellate court finds that the prosecution's reasons for removing black jurors were pretextual, meaning they gave race-neutral reasons as cover for racial discrimination, that verdict can be overturned and a new trial ordered. That has happened in American courts before. It is not a fantasy argument. Fox 7 Austin. Ground 2, self-defense instruction and evidence. Video footage and witness testimony, even from defense witnesses, generally indicated that Anthony provoked the situation with Metcalf and deadly force was not needed, contradicting the self-defense argument. Anthony's defense will likely argue on appeal that the jury instructions weren't sufficient to allow them to properly weigh the sudden passion mitigating factor, which could have cut the sentence dramatically. The jury had that option and they rejected it. Whether those instructions were worded appropriately is something appellate courts scrutinize closely. Daily Wire. Neither of these is a guaranteed win, but they are real arguments. The Give, Send, Go fundraiser for Anthony and his family has raised more than $625,000 with more than 18,000 donations as of June 2026, which means the Anthony family has significant resources to fund a serious appellate team. This appeal will happen, it will be funded, and it will go to higher courts. Prime timer. Here's the thing that nobody wants to say out loud, but I'm going to say it. The reason this case has broken the internet, the reason Charleston White reaction clips end up everywhere within hours, is because this case is a Rorschach test for how you see America. If you look at this case and see a young man who stabbed an unarmed person in the chest after provoking a confrontation, the verdict was correct and justice was served. If you look at this case and see a young black man denied a jury of his peers, convicted in under 3 hours in a county in Texas with an all-white jury on an interracial case that got massive right-wing media attention, you see a system that failed him. Research has shown that public perceptions of violence can change depending on the race of the victim and offender, leading many people to view cases like Anthony's through broader questions about fairness and who is seen as justified in using force. News Nation. Both things can be true at the same time. Austin Metcalf's family deserves justice, and the question of whether Karmelo Anthony got a constitutionally fair trial based on the jury composition is a legitimate question that courts should answer. These are not mutually exclusive positions. A Give, Send, Go fundraiser for Anthony has raised about $625,000, while a GoFundMe for Metcalf's family has raised just under $600,000. Two families, equal grief, a country still divided. That's where we are. CNN. Charleston White has a talent for walking into the most combustible conversations and adding fuel to the fire. Sometimes he's wrong, sometimes he's more right than people want to admit. In this case, when he says an appeal is being prepared and that there are factors behind the scenes, he's not making that up. The Batson challenge alone is a legitimate legal argument that appellate courts take seriously. This case is going to be in courts for years. What I know for certain is this: Austin Metcalf is gone. His family is living through something no family should live through. And whatever your position on the verdict, that reality should sit with all of us. The family of Austin Metcalf said it best. They weren't celebrating. They called it justice, but not a reason to be happy. Comment down below. Do you think the appeal has a real shot based on the jury composition? Do you think the verdict was right? I genuinely want to hear from both sides on this. Subscribe if you're new. This channel covers these stories with full research, not just reactions. I'll see you in the next one.